Can you understand the original Aesop's fable, The Wind and the Sun? Let's go! First, there are only two words that you need to know. Two words. Dispute. Dispute. Dispute means argue, fight with words. Retired. In modern English, we use retired to talk about people who have reached an old age and stopped working. In this story, you are going to see an older, less common usage of the word, which means move away or withdraw. So that's retire, means move away, withdraw. I withdraw behind my hand because I'm scared, maybe. Here's the story. The wind and the sun were disputing which was the stronger. Suddenly, they saw a traveler coming down the road. And the sun said, I see a way to decide our dispute. Whichever of us can cause that traveler to take off his cloak shall be regarded as the stronger. You begin. So the sun retired behind a cloud, and the wind began to blow as hard as it could upon the traveler. But the harder he blew, the more closely did the traveler wrap his cloak around him, till at last the wind had to give up in despair. Then the sun came out and shone in all its glory upon the traveler, who soon found it too hot to walk with his cloak on. Kindness affects more than severity. That's the moral of the story. Okay. Most of this story has simple vocabulary, but at the same time, it was difficult to understand fully. You probably understood most of the words, but still can't make sense of it somehow. Well, don't worry, I'm going to help you. We will go through it part by part. I think there are 12 parts I'm going to talk to you about today. So let's work together and we can do it. So the first part, the wind and the sun were disputing which was the stronger. What's the subject of this story? The wind and the sun. And what are they doing? They were disputing. Disputing means arguing, fighting. Do you remember? What were they arguing about? They were arguing about who was stronger. The sun thinks he is stronger than the wind, and the wind thinks he is stronger than the sun. Next part. It says, suddenly they saw a traveler coming down the road. The writer uses suddenly to interrupt the argument. In the previous sentence, the writer used were disputing. What tense is this? It's the past continuous, okay? So why did he use the past continuous? Because in our mind, the sun and the wind were continuously arguing. And this continuous argument was interrupted in our minds with suddenly. This changes the pace of the story and brings our attention to something new. So, what new thing did they see? They saw a traveler. They saw a traveler coming down the road. They saw a traveler coming down the road. Next bit. And the sun said, I see a way to decide our dispute. To decide a dispute means to end the argument by seeing who is correct. What are they trying to decide? You should know now. What are they trying to decide? They are trying to decide who is stronger, the sun or the wind. Okay? Easy, yes? Next part. Whichever of us can cause that traveler to take off his cloak shall be regarded as the stronger. You begin. Here, whichever means either the sun or the wind. One of them will cause the traveler to take off his cloak. Cause in this sentence, what does cause mean? Cause means the result that's needed to win. What result do they need to win? The result they need is that the traveler takes off his cloak. Okay? So the next part. So the sun retired behind a cloud. In modern English, as I said before, what does retire mean? Retire means someone who is old and no longer works. However, what does it mean in our story? Retire means hide behind. The sun is in my eyes. Retire means hide behind, withdraw, go away. So what did the sun do in our story? The sun retired behind a cloud. What does it mean? It means the sun went behind the cloud. Next part. And the wind began to blow as hard as it could upon the traveler. What action does the wind do? Does the wind run? Does it fly? Does it walk? No, the wind blows. Usually, the wind blows. Did it blow gently? No, it blew as hard as it could. As hard as it could means it used all of its strength to the maximum. Upon means on. So the sentence means the wind blew with full strength on the traveler. Why with full strength? Because he wanted to win, of course. Next part. But the harder he blew, the more closely did the traveler wrap his cloak round him. There is a common grammatical structure here which uses two comparatives. Two comparatives to talk about two things increasing more and more at the same time. As one thing increases, the other increases too. The harder he blew, the more the traveler wrapped the cloak around him. It's a very common structure. Here are some more examples. The faster I walk, the faster my heart beats. Which means that my heart beats faster and faster at the same time as I increase my walking speed. Another example. The more I study English, the better I can speak it. Okay. Next bit. Till at last the wind had to give up in despair. Here, till is short for until. Until at last is like saying, finally, after a long time, finally. He had to give up in despair. Despair is a very strong word here. It's a very deep kind of sadness where you feel like you are lost and have no hope. Give up? What's give up? Give up is a phrasal verb which means he stopped working and accepted his failure. So this sentence tells us that the wind stopped working. He failed and he felt hopeless. and sad. He felt despair. Next. Then the sun came out. Note how the author uses then to give a sense of movement and logic to the story. It's really important when you tell stories. Okay, next part, let me see. And shone in all his glory upon the traveller. All his glory, this sounds very poetic, and it just means that he shone very strongly. So what action does the sun take? The sun doesn't run, the sun doesn't blow, the sun shines. And the past of shine is irregular, it's shone. So the sun shone as strongly as he could. It's saying the same kind of thing that we heard earlier with the wind, but the author talked about the wind using the words, he blew as hard as he could. Here the author is saying the same thing, but he has used different words to add more interest to the story. Also, the saying, with all his glory, feels very positive and bright. And we get a real sense that the sun is about to have a good result. Perhaps the sun is about to win. The author builds this expectation in us. Okay, next. The next part of the story continues. The traveller, okay, who soon found it too hot to walk with his cloak on. Did he take his cloak off? Yes, I think he did. Did the story say this exactly? No, it didn't. This is an example of implied meaning. Implied meaning means things we understand from the words, but we don't read them exactly. In this story, in this fable, you can see how important implied meaning is. The implied meaning is that he took his cloak off, and this is the final punchline, the final point of the story. It is very important to the story that we understand this. If it's so important, then why did the author leave it out? He left it out because this is a fable. A fable is a story with a moral meaning. In this case, the effect of not defining the result for us leaves our mind to fill in the gap. This begins the process of us thinking about the story. So I can walk here through this park and think, what happened at the end of the story? What is the meaning? And the moral meaning that's given for us? Kindness affects more than severity. Now, in many modern texts, people have adapted the moral to make it easier to understand. But I think it's interesting to explore this meaning. And I think you can understand it too. It's not so hard. Okay? The important word to understand in the moral, kindness affects severity. The critical word here is affects. Affects is normally used as a noun, but in this case, it is being used as a verb, which is very interesting and something we don't see so often. In this case, affects means something similar to cause. If you remember, we came across the word cause in the story previously. So it's saying kindness causes more than severity. So the result of kindness is better than the result of severity. So what is severity? Severity is like the wind. The wind was not kind to the traveller. The wind treated him very badly and severely. This is severity. So I think the moral means, if you want good results from people, don't be critical, don't be unkind. When we're unkind to people, it makes them wear their cloak tighter. It makes them retire from the world and want to give up. When someone is critical to us, we stop trying. This is really important for learning English. Think about the times you have tried to speak English. When someone says something bad to you, it discourages you and makes you believe you can't speak English. But when someone guides you kindly and with love, you are motivated, you make progress, you want to do more, be more, speak more. In the middle of a stormy world, a little sunshine makes all the difference. I don't want to sound too cheesy, but I want you to be the sunshine today and go and encourage someone with their English. Let's build each other up, not tear each other down. Thank you for joining me.